The African National Congress has condemned the United States' new administration for the continued interference, they say, in South Africa's affairs. In a statement, the party says these actions are a direct assault on South Africa's sovereignty. Let's talk about it more with the ANC's national spokesperson, Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri. Mahlengi, good morning to you. Thanks, as always, for your time. How do you see this as an assault on South Africa's affairs?
Certainly is. It is actually unprecedented in many respects that there would be a disregard for existing channels of communication between two countries in an instance where there is a matter that is unclear and is of concern to one of the countries that enjoy a relationship, both at a bilateral as well as at a multilateral level. So it is definitely quite unprecedented. It is tries to be a threat on our national sovereignty, and something that cannot be allowed and should not be allowed. And we issue a call to action in our statement, calling on South Africans to do much more to secure and safeguard national sovereignty and our territorial integrity, since these are hard-won achievements that we currently enjoy. Our national sovereignty, where we're able to determine the course of action for our country, where we're able to engage with the entire community of nations on the basis of our sovereignty and taking decisions that are also in the national interest. And so any attempt to undermine South Africa and its sovereignty is something that South Africans have to unite about, not just political parties.
Based on what you said, I mean, the US government could say, this is not a threat in your sovereignty. This is not us interfering in South Africa's matters. We're governing how we respond to what we see happening in your country. Aid that we're giving is not aid that any country is entitled to. We give this as a way to partner with countries. So we want to withhold that because we don't like this and that. So these are the conditionalities, the T's and C's that come with that aid, for example. Or you might be taking, an ideological policy or legal stand on something. We don't like it, and this is how we're responding to it. So just share with South Africans how you think it is a credible encroachment on the actual territories that South Africa has claimed to and on our independence as a country.
Certainly, it is an encroachment that lacks any semblance of credibility. We do have mechanisms for engagement, as I said, at a bilateral level, and those remain open. Our Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, together with our President, and of course we also have an ambassador to the US, and the same here for the US to South Africa. There's absolutely no justification whatsoever for a head of state to make strong articulations about another country, again, also on the basis of misinformation and disinformation. It just cannot be a correct thing by any standard. In fact, the mere fact that those that have been peddling the lies internationally in the name of AfriForum and solidarity are now backtracking is precisely because there is no evidence to suggest that there's land confiscation in South Africa. There are land grabs. In fact, the president of AgriSA, who are the primary party to this insofar as the interests of farmers are concerned, have come out publicly to say there are no land grabs in South Africa. So you only have to wonder as to what is the basis for the U.S. the recently installed U.S. administration to make such very strong statements about South Africa. So it's something that has got really South Africans have got to be mindful of the amount of effort it has taken this country to begin to put some bare bones to the unity project and to unify South Africans in their diversity, to actually ensure that our constitutionalism passes the ultimate test in terms of international standards.
Yeah.
It cannot be easy. It should not be easy for anyone to come and disrupt a project of that nature for as long as South Africa is utilizing its constitution and the rule of law, including the international law.
So let's talk about the legal aspect of all of this, Mahlengi. And we've had several experts talk about and invoke several pieces of legislation that would define or encompass what AfriForum has done within the ambit of being treasonable, potentially. They invoke the Riotous Assemblies Act of 1917, instigating foreign intervention in a country's affairs, all related to the route that AfriForum has gone. How do you feel about that call? And are you, as the ANC, actively pursuing that?
Well, our preoccupation, I must just say, Iman, is the unity of South Africans. And our preoccupation is really pursuing what our historical mission has always been since the formation of the African National Congress, which is to unite South Africans, black and white. But primarily when we were formed was to unite black people so that we could wage a struggle against colonialism. We are still, even in this context, this day and age, are committed to unity, to national unity. So we tend to focus, we really prefer to focus more on that. I've had a number of calls being made, and we know that there are a number of parties in South Africa that are pursuing opening a case of treason, charging AfriForum in solidarity with treason. All that we can say is that we will not obviously dictate or prescribe to South Africans how they need to react to this transgression, a very serious transgression to ever be experienced in a democratic South Africa. But we wish to engage further. That is why we're supporting the national dialogue effort that is being led by the president of the country and the foundations when the stewardship of President Mbeki, because we do believe that the dialogue among South Africans should still continue. However, it cannot be correct that AfriForum and those that work with them are left alone when they've caused such massive damage to the brand South Africa, but also to national unity and our sovereignty.
Right. So you won't pursue, a treason charge against them. As you say, you want to focus on unity, but you do appreciate the damage that they've done to brand South Africa. So what are you going to do?
Well, as indicated, on our part as the African National Congress, we continue with the work that we are doing anyway. And I must just also add that somebody was talking about what about aid, given what we've been told about if we do not get rid of this legislation that we've passed, that it has a bearing on the aid that we receive from the US. We must indicate that aid is aid from wherever it comes. Once that aid is appreciated, and all developing countries do require some form of assistance to be able to tackle social and economic challenges, aid does not come at the expense of our national sovereignty. So in terms of what we are going to do, we are going to proceed with ensuring the implementation of the Expropriation Act in line with the provisions of the legislation. So we don't want to be detracted from the work we should be focusing on.
Okay, I'll come back to the PEPFAR UNAID story in just a moment. So are you doing all of this around AfriForum, or are you talking to them directly to say, hey, what you're doing, we do believe is treasonable. We're not going to pursue a legal charge against you. We do believe that you've damaged our country severely and you've imperiled viable programs that do a lot of good work in South Africa, even though it's a small percentage relative to the whole pool of how much aid we're getting from the United States. Pull up your socks. Change your tune. Have you engaged them directly?
No, we have not, and we really do not have a reason to do so because they have made their views known about what they now have turned around and said, no, actually, it isn't all South Africans, it is the ANC. there isn't any reason for us to be going to the AfriForum. Our focus should be on uniting South Africans. Our focus should be on ensuring that the programs of government are rolled out with the necessary speed so that we can free up land for development. We can free up land for human settlements purposes. We can free up land in order to grow economy and ensuring inclusive growth. That should be our preoccupation. It's very easy to be sidetracked by the utterances of the AfriForum or the campaigning. We do believe that, however, South Africans, not only should they see them for what they represent, what we call a counter-revolutionary action and organization, and what they should be called out for being a far-right network in South Africa that is aimed, hell-bent at destabilizing the work of government.
Yeah.
We're working very hard to unite South Africans. That is why we produced a statement of intent and went and set up an ANC-led government of national unity, which has done a lot of good work to ensure that South Africa unite around the work of government and support their own government. And we've seen South Africans rising and calling them out. But if you were to ask me whether we are going to be focusing on the AfriForum, I would say that the African National Congress is not going to be doing so. That doesn't stop any South African of sound mind to take the matters up wherever they want to take them, and we will not stop in the way of that.
Here's the thing, though, Mahlengi, when we talk about the impact of foreign aid, such as, the United States and PEPFAR, and saying, we will not allow, as you've just said, that aid doesn't come at the expense of our sovereignty, essentially. There's a very real impact. Now, I wonder then what your message is to those organizations, those clinics, those healthcare service providers who are without funding, who will have to potentially let go of their staff once this matter reaches its finality, because it is in the region of I think it's around 8 billion, 7.5 billion rand, could severely affect South Africa's health system and economy. It's really having an impact on staffing, for example, around South Africa's HIV and TB treatment. We've heard others also say, we've got to do this for ourselves, South Africa. But the gap between this moment and when South Africa does do it for itself does imperil the well-being and the care to a vast community of people who rely on that, not only for their livelihoods, but also for their treatment. So, do we have the luxury then of saying what we're saying now? How do we rescue that relationship if that is the intention, and make sure that these programs like these remain on track while we get our house in order?
No, certainly. Iman, and please hear me correctly on this issue. We are not closing the door on the engagement. We have said our government should engage and clarify the U.S. administration about South African policies, particularly the ones that are deemed vexatious, including the Expropriation Act and any other policy that is perceived to be a South Africa that is doing very, very bad things. We continue to talk about engagement, because it's important for us to do so. We use the channels of government to do that, state to state, and part of that conversation would include the role of USAID here in South Africa, would include the PEPFAR program here in South Africa, for us to get a better understanding of the decisions that have been taken by the US administration. And of course, it is important that our own government, I would imagine as it is now, that the expense of losing such funding is being costed. The cost of losing that funding is being looked at against the national budget, looked at against the resources that are available in the country to support HIV programs, for example. I don't think that the government is sitting, on their laurels and they're not looking at all of those possibilities. Having said all of that, any discussion, any aid that seeks to wipe away sovereignty of any country, then that is not aid, it is something else. That is the position of the ANC. But engagement, certainly that has got to happen. I mean, the president has said as much anyway, that we are available to engage, but we will not be bullied.
And we are set to send a high-powered delegation to Washington to negotiate. So we'll keep tabs on that one as well. Thank you for talking to us. The ANC's national spokesperson, Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri.